Hey, welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Monday, December 20th. I had to look at that for a second. I was going to run this on Tuesday, but decided to run it today. Lots of bowl action going on. I want to talk about Big Ten bowl games. Obviously, not going to talk about the Ohio State Rose Bowl game. We're going to talk about that at length on various other shows. Not going to talk about that team up north in the college football playoff either. I'm sure we will have a show talking about the playoff. I want to talk about the other games, however, which start December 28th. So we got a little ways to go. Things could change in terms of who's playing, who's not playing. But I figured this was as good a time as any, as we're going through a lot of bowl games right now. MAC games, Sun Belt. There have been some fun games to watch so far. There have been some ugly games. Big Ten still, the good news for the Big Ten is the Big Ten doesn't start until very late in the process. So you see all these other conferences are starting to get things going. Big Ten not getting involved at this point. It'll take a little bit of time. For those of you who are watching games, though, by the time that we get this show aired, let me pull up what we've got today here on the 20th, and that is Old Dominion Tulsa in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. That game is already going as we're recording, so we may have a final in that by the time you see this. We have other games coming up. Kent State, Wyoming, UTSA, San Diego State play on Tuesday, Missouri Army on Wednesday, North Texas and Miami of Ohio, along with UCF and Florida on Thursday. And then on Christmas Eve, we have Memphis and Hawaii. So lots of games, but once again, no Big Ten action. That doesn't start until December 28th. And the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, West Virginia, Minnesota. Minnesota, 4.5-point favorite. Now, Minnesota's dealing with some coaching changes underneath PJ Fleck, but it doesn't necessarily appear that we're going to see any players opting out. They got good news earlier in the year. Mo Ibrahim will be back, the running back, so that's good for them. West Virginia is going to be dealing with some portal movement in terms of transfers, not necessarily opt-out, so, you got that going on with them. Over under a 45 in that game. I don't know how I feel about that game as I think about it. Minnesota's 8-4, West Virginia's 6-6. In theory, you would think Minnesota comes out, plays some really good games along the way. Doesn't look so good in other ones. So, I think I'm going to take Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to be a little bit more motivated in that one. That game will be played at Chase Field in Phoenix. Sorry, I got a piece of pepperoni in my teeth. Let's go forward to the 29th. And that is Maryland and Virginia Tech in the New Era Pinstripe Bowl. For all this talk about, Ohio State this, Ohio State that, I think that if Ohio State ever played in the Pinstripe Bowl, the fan base would absolutely just implode out of anger. How dare they play that low down the bowl schedule? But, for a couple of 6-6 teams, it's a good opportunity. Maryland's a 3.5-point favorite. Virginia Tech already has 5 opt-outs at the time of recording, including Trey Turner, 3 on defense. Oh, by the way, Virginia Tech has an interim coach as well with the departure of Justin Fuente. Brent Pry, formerly of Penn State, will be coming in there to start the next season. We'll talk about him again in a second. I don't know. I don't trust Maryland. I don't trust Virginia Tech either. I mean, talk about two teams I don't trust at all. As I said, Maryland, 3.5-point favorite, over under 55. As I sit here and I kind of go through this, let's kind of pull up the schedule for what Virginia Tech did down the stretch. Granted, they were trying to play for their coach's job. They went on a 3-game losing streak with Notre Dame, Pitt, and Syracuse, and then they went back and forth, wins to losses, beating Georgia Tech, losing to BC, beating Duke, losing to Miami, and then beating UVA. I mean, that UVA win, always a big game in that series between Virginia Tech and Virginia. You send your coach off, I guess, the right way, sort of, kind of. I mean, you now have an interim. I just don't trust Virginia Tech at all. I think I'm gonna take Maryland for as little as I trust Michael Oxley, and that's very little, very little. Go to December 30th, the Music City Bowl. Tennessee and Purdue. Tennessee is a 4.5-point favorite. And Tennessee is a 4.5-point favorite because Purdue will not have David Bell. Purdue will not have George Karflatis, the defensive end. That's bad news. We certainly saw Purdue climb up, get into the top 25, and then Ohio State, had to, win against that team, and they just threw all over Ohio State, but the Buckeyes were able to win it. But no David Bell certainly cuts their chances. Purdue can't run the ball. They lose their best defender by a large margin. Tennessee's terrible this year. I mean, I know they're 7-5, but they play in that SEC East, and the SEC East is horrible. They did win their last 2 games. Granted, that was South Alabama and Vanderbilt. They lost in a big way to Georgia. They did beat Kentucky by 3 in a 45-42 game. As much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to take Tennessee in this game just because there's nothing left at the end for Purdue. Tennessee is a team that people are already starting to talk up for 2022. Purdue, they're going to have to figure some things out because obviously they're losing a couple of their best players. We have the Peach Bowl. One of the New Year's 6 bowl games is going to be on the 30th. Michigan State and Pitt. Get excited, everybody. It is a bowl game between 2 teams that we think something about. No Kenneth Walker III for Michigan State. No Kenny Pickett for Pittsburgh. So that is an issue for both teams. Pittsburgh has a bigger issue. No offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. He's gone. He's gone to Nebraska. So Michigan State's a 2.5-point favorite in this one. An over-under of 56. Pitt certainly has a lot to feel good about after it took care of Wake Forest. Michigan State, this is a battle of top 12 teams. I think that goes to show you that there's just really, after the first couple of teams, it's just kind of a jumble for what the rest of the top 25 looks like. I don't want to take Michigan State here. I just don't feel that I think with no Kenneth Walker, there's some issues. What is the health of their receivers? What is the health of the 2 receivers? They did not have them for Ohio State. One was gone. They lost the other one pretty much right through the beginning of the game. Honestly, if they have, if they're able to have some weapons to offset the loss of not having Kenneth Walker, that's great. But if you don't have Reed and if you don't have Naylor, that is a big loss for them. But I'm going to take Michigan State, probably against my own better judgment. But it is kind of what it is. We got the Las Vegas Bowl as well, wrapping off the action on the 30th. Wisconsin and Arizona State. Wisconsin, a 7-point favorite. Arizona State's down 2 of its backs. Rashad White has opted for the draft. He's gone. Chip Trainum, he's in the portal. He's a name to keep an eye on, Buckeye fans. I'm telling you, just keep an eye on him where he might land. You look at Wisconsin, and it was a team that was just so bad to start the season. And then, of course, they come off and they lay an egg against Minnesota to end the season 23-13. What are you going to get from the Badgers? I don't know what they're going to get from Arizona State. Arizona State down 2 running backs. That certainly is an issue. And as I'm pulling up their stats here, I'm filibustering as I'm talking right now to get to that. But they're rushing. White was their leading rusher with 1,006 yards. Obviously, their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, he's ran for 670, and then Chip ran for 402. So you're losing 1,400 yards of rushing, 1,400 to 2,400. Or 2,450 if we're really being fair. That's going to put a lot on Daniels, the runner. It's going to put a lot on Daniel Ngata, who had 45 carries for 286. You lose 15 touchdowns with White. You lose 6 with Chip. That's 21 of 33 rushing touchdowns. I don't think that Arizona State's going to have much in the way of offense. They threw for 12 touchdowns and 9 picks. Daniels 10 touchdowns, 9 picks this year. I'm gonna take Wisconsin there, and I like them to cover in a big way. Let's move forward to the Outback Bowl, Penn State and Arkansas. Penn State is a 2-point favorite Now, Arkansas's in trouble with no Traylon White, their best wide receiver. Penn State, we already know, doesn't have its DC, Brent Pry, going to Virginia Tech. Doesn't have linebacker Brandon Smith. What is the status of Jahan Dotson? Jahan Dotson means everything to that team. I mean, obviously, Sean Clifford means a lot too, but if he doesn't have Jahan Dotson, that's a major problem. I don't like to keep picking all these Big Ten teams. Big Ten had the one year where it won every game but one, and it was Michigan losing. Obviously that was Ohio State fans' best scenario. The Big Ten does well, Michigan doesn't, and hilarity ensued. I think Arkansas pulls off the upset. I really do, even without its top receiver. We don't know what Dotson's status is going to be, but that just feels like a game that Arkansas plays its what's off and is able to win. And then our last game, again, we're not talking Ohio State, we're not talking Michigan, is the Citrus Bowl, Iowa and Kentucky. And Kentucky's a 3-point favorite. Iowa's not going to have running back Tyler Goodson, but All-American lineman Tyler Linderbaum will play. I don't know how to feel about that game. That's another game where you sit there and you look at Iowa and they got up to number 2. That's wonderful. And then they got, the last taste of Iowa we had was 42-3 on the wrong end against Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. Sure, Iowa won its last 4 games, but none of those games were convincing, and none of those games were against teams with a pulse, really, in my opinion. Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, Nebraska. I mean, sure, they did the customary 9 or less to Nebraska. A lot of teams fall into theirs. Nebraska proved to be the best 3-9 team maybe ever. But none of those other games really jump off to me. So for Iowa being 10-3, for Iowa being Big Ten West champions, I am not overly impressed with what I've seen out of Iowa. On the other side, we can sit there, we can pull up Kentucky's schedule. I mean, they play in the lesser division of the SEC, but they're on a 3-game winning streak. Granted, at Vanderbilt, yawn. Home against New Mexico State, double yawn. And then at Louisville, they more than doubled them up 52-21. You go back and they were on a 3-game losing streak. Granted, that was UGA, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. But again, 2 of those games, UGA, I think, was to be expected. Mississippi State beating them and holding them down to 17, I think, was a little bit of a surprise. Was never really sold on Kentucky, but I'm less sold on Iowa. I'm going to take Kentucky in this one. And I think Kentucky will cover. So I think the Big Ten's going to win some games. I think they're going to drop a couple games. Certainly that Outback Bowl, certainly that Citrus Bowl. You get to those January 1 bowl games. It's like, got to win those games. Those mean more than these other lesser games. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl, the New Era Pinstripe Bowl. Those are not ones that you build graphics around. I mean, again, I guess you do if that's all you got. But I think that the Big Ten. I mean, the problem that the Big Ten runs into is that getting multiple teams into the New Year's 6 Access Bowls, everybody's playing a slot or 2 off. So your 4th best Big Ten team or your 5th best Big Ten team is playing the 3rd best in another conference. So it's 1 to 2 slots off, and it generally does create some problems there. But again, we could sit there and do this show again in a week, and opt-outs could look completely different, and I might change my mind on what I see there. So that's the beauty of it. How have you been doing in your bowl games? Let me know in your statement. One last story before I call it a quick show here. Took a little 3-team parlay on Saturday, and Fresno State killed me. Fresno State had the opportunity to fall on the ball in the end zone, get up by more than 11.5, and I would have escaped with the win there because I was giving 11.5 there. And, well, it didn't happen. It was a safety. Fresno State just really couldn't stay out of its own way. It went on to win the game, but not by enough. On the back end, I took Louisiana to win outright, giving 4 points, and I took the over. And by the time I went to bed, the game wasn't over yet. I was just like, well, it doesn't really matter. I've already lost my ticket. Well, lo and behold, they win by more than 4, and they end up hitting the over. So, whatever. It was a small loss. I mean, a $20 ticket that would have paid $140. That would have been nice to pick up some bourbon, but What about you? How are you doing? A lot of underdogs are hitting right now. A lot of underdogs. So, buyer beware. Ohio State, obviously a favorite in its bowl game, but we need to see what the opt-outs are going to look like there. Ohio State's 6.5-point favorite at time of recording this. I'm not so confident we're going to see Garrett Wilson, maybe Chris Olave. Then, of course, there's the question about does anybody get sick between now and then? They'll save that for another show. Highly political topic there. But again, this is a quick and dirty Big Me Kickoff. Didn't even run the Open. Didn't even run the Open today. But I want to thank you for being part of the show. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check everything out. We'll do a one up right on right before Christmas, or maybe right after Christmas, before we really get into the thick of bowl preps. Let me know any topics you want to talk about. Again, this is your show, everybody. I want to give you the topics that you want to talk about. So until then, I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It's a Big Me Kickoff here on Buckeye Scoop. We'll talk to you very soon.